The room was steeped in a profound darkness, an oppressive gloom that seemed to possess a watchful presence. Above a circular table, a lone chandelier cast a feeble light that struggled to penetrate the room's shadowy edges, while the air hung heavy with the acrid scent of smoke and palpable tension. Around the table sat the formidable bosses of the circle. Among them, one figure, James, remained utterly silent and still, a shadow whose mere presence commanded more attention than the others' fervent arguments. One leader, Marco the Butcher De Luca, hit the table and angrily said the money split wasn't fair. He claimed he brought in half the money but got very little. The woman across from him, Isabella the Spider, smirked. She reminded him that her influence was essential in keeping their deals secret from the police. Without her, their money would be police evidence. Another leader, Victor the Viper Moretti, spoke, his voice low and angry. He asked who cleaned up all their problems and dealt with people who stepped out of line. He told them to talk about fairness. Marco threw up his hands in frustration. Isabella interrupted him, her voice cold. She said she could handle such matters if he let her. But he was too busy acting like a hero. Marco, with scars on his face, leaned forward, his eyes narrow. He asked if she thought she could do what he did, if she had the courage for it. She answered that she did, but unlike him, she didn't enjoy it. The fourth leader, Sophia, the ghost, who had been quiet, finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but cut through the room like a sharp knife. She said they should be a team, but all she saw was greed. She warned that if they continued like this, they would destroy each other before anyone else could. Marco responded with a harsh, bitter laugh. He said they were not a team, calling them a ticking time bomb, that everyone in the room knew it to be. Suddenly, James moved slightly. It was a very small movement, but it made everyone stop and look at him. "Enough," he said, his voice low and calm. The room became completely still. No one argued. No one even breathed loudly. James continued, looking around the room. He said they were not there to fight each other. They were there to decide how to move forward. He added that if they couldn't do that without fighting, maybe they didn't belong at this table. The silence after this was even heavier. No one dared to speak. No one dared to look directly at him. Because in the circle, there was only one rule. No one went against James. James then confirmed the details of their recent operation. He stated that Isabella had gathered the information, and Victor had bribed the guards, asking if this was correct. Victor confirmed it. James then asked if Marco and Sophia handled the details of the robbery. Sophia answered that it was correct. James leaned back in his chair, tilting his head a little. He wondered what they were arguing about. He said since he was not involved in any of it, it was only fair that everyone received an equal 25% share. The room became silent again, but this time, everyone looked at each other, unsure. Finally, Sophia spoke. She started to say James also deserved a share. She stopped in the middle of her sentence. The moment she looked into James's eyes, she understood. The look in his eyes carried a different message. It was not the look of a man who needed anything from them. James then asked if she really thought he needed it. He reminded them that a year ago, they had come to him, asking to form an alliance, to build an empire together, to become the most powerful. James slowly stood from his chair, looking at each of them. His voice was calm and controlled, but a dangerous feeling was hidden beneath it. He then mentioned Marco's words about being a ticking bomb. Marco suddenly looked down at the floor, unable to meet James's gaze. James's voice grew louder, his strong gaze sweeping across the room. In his eyes burned a fire that made even the toughest men stop. A fire no one dared to challenge. He said that bomb could explode right then. Isabella, her voice strained and sweat dripping down her face, as if she had just run a race, finally spoke. She begged James to ignore Marco's slip, acknowledging their error. She bowed her head even lower as she spoke. The others nodded silently, none of them daring to look up at James. He breathed out slowly, then a small smile appeared on his lips. He conceded to discussing the split. With that, he sank back into his chair, and instantly, the feeling in the room changed. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and the fear disappeared for a moment. Sophia then agreed, saying their blood would confirm the agreement. She stood up, pricked her finger with a small blade, and let a single drop of blood fall into the cup in the middle of the table. One by one, the others did the same, sealing the agreement in the only way the circle knew. James stepped forward, pressing the blade against his own finger, saying his blood would confirm it. But as he moved, he suddenly felt dizzy. He had barely eaten or slept. The sharp cut from the blade mixed with his tiredness, and before he could stand steady, he stumbled right into Sophia. She quickly asked if he was all right, holding him firmly. James chuckled quietly, shaking his head. He apologized, explaining he hadn't been sleeping much lately. His voice was smooth, his smile easy. But that smile, mixed with his scent, woke up something in Sophia, something that had been hidden for a long time. And the others saw it too. They weren't sure what had just happened, but as they watched them, they all had the same thought. He's planning something. When the meeting finally ended, James was the first to leave. The moment he stepped outside, the cold air hit him hard. His heart beat fast, and his blood pressure went up. He thought to himself that he almost died in there. He took deep, slow breaths, careful to keep his face calm. He knew none of his brothers could ever see him like this. He thought that if they had said no to his terms, they would have attacked him badly. He also wondered why they were even arguing, calling them worse than children, and he found his suit very uncomfortable. "Sir?" A voice broke his thoughts. To his left, a man dressed well stepped forward. James quickly got his calm behavior back and told Hans, his driver, to take him home. As he sat in the back seat, he closed his eyes for a moment. He wished he could go back to his old life, back to his morning coffee, back to the comforting smell of coffee, back to a time when his biggest worry wasn't if today would be the day they found out his secret. But that thought broke when his phone suddenly rang. And just like that, the man he never wanted to be returned. James shouted to Hans to drive to the hospital as fast as he could, and that was all Hans needed. He pushed the gas pedal down hard. When they arrived at the hospital, James didn't even wait for the car to stop completely. He opened the door quickly and jumped out, rushing inside with all his strength. He demanded to know about his brother, grabbing his mother's arms tightly. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She sobbed, falling into James's arms, crying about how they could do this to her little boy. Her cries echoed down the hallway. That was all James needed to hear. Without waiting, he went straight to the hospital room, pushing the door open. He found his little brother, Raphael, lying there, connected to machines. His body was covered in bruises, and his head was wrapped in bandages. "Raphael!" James fell to his knees beside the bed, clenching his fists as he tried not to cry. He whispered that he was there now, and Raphael no longer had to be afraid, his voice breaking as he cried. A doctor entered the room, holding a file. James quickly stood up straight and looked at the doctor, his gaze strong and not giving way, saying nothing. The doctor explained that his brother's condition was stable, but he had been underwater for too long. James's hands tightened into fists as he asked about being underwater. The doctor swallowed hard and quickly looked back at the file before continuing. He reported that Raphael was saved from the Sun River by a fisherman. The doctor stopped for a moment, knowing his words were making James angrier, but he had no choice. He said the fisherman claimed 3 other boys had thrown Raphael into the river. James cut him off and demanded their names. The doctor apologized, saying he could not share that information. The doctor instantly knew who he was dealing with. The James Bellini standing there was not just a name whispered in dark places. He was a legend, a nightmare. The doctor swallowed hard before speaking again. He said the fisherman identified one of the boys as Adam Hinz, and he had turned himself in to the police and confessed. James's eyes now showed no kindness, only pure anger. He asked if it was the police chief's son. The doctor said nothing, just nodded slightly and quickly left the room. "Rest now, Raphael. Your big brother will take care of everything," James whispered with a cold smile before stepping out to his waiting mother. He told her to stay with Raphael. She began to say his name, but he did not wait. He walked straight to the car. "To the police station, Hans," he ordered. Hans asked if he should tell the circle, but James simply said he would handle it. That was all Hans needed to hear. He started the engine and drove fast towards the police station. The moment James walked inside, everyone looked at him. A cold wave of fear spread through the entire station. No one dared to stop him. They just let him pass, watching as he walked straight through the metal detector, which started beeping before he even reached it. Without stopping, he went straight to the police chief's office. The door burst open with such force that the sound echoed through the upstairs. Inside, the police chief immediately stood from his chair, clearly nervous. His son, Adam, sat beside him, smiling in a smug way as if nothing had happened. A woman's voice came from the side. James had not noticed her before, but her presence did not matter to him. He started to speak to the police chief about his son, but the woman interrupted. She said she never thought the most wanted man would just walk into her hands. She called him James Bellini, the one who controlled Hargun, the most dangerous criminal in the city. She said she was an agent of the National Security Bureau of Investigations and had handcuffs ready. James simply told her to shut up. She asked him to repeat himself. He then asked which part of "shut up" she did not understand. She began to protest that she was not a low-level cop, but James just called Hans's name. Hans immediately listed the agent's personal information while looking directly into her eyes. Her name was Hannah Forston. She was 40 years old, an NSBI agent, had 2 daughters in high school in Fernie under fake names. Her ex-husband was fighting her for custody, and her parents lived under different names in Kefut, just like her children. Hannah froze for a second, surprised, but she knew what kind of man she was dealing with. She tried to challenge him again, mentioning that threatening an agent was a bold move, but James's anger reached its highest point. He declared he would destroy her entire family tree and watch as every single one of her relatives disappeared. He ordered her to get out of his sight. He would never actually do such terrible things, but he had to use his reputation. Still, he was a little surprised at how easily those words came out. Hannah's eyes widened in fear, and her hands trembled as she slowly left the office. By now, the police chief's son had lost his smug look. He finally understood he was in very, very deep trouble. The man in front of him was not just dangerous, he was like a demon. The police chief pleaded with James to talk. James ignored him, taking a coin from his pocket and asking Adam if he wanted heads or tails. The police chief fell to his knees, begging James to listen. Adam's father tried to speak, but James told him there was no dad here, and repeated his question about heads or tails. Adam whispered tails. James flipped the coin, and quickly it landed back in his hand. He explained that if it was heads, he would torture everything and everyone Adam loved, including his girlfriend, his dog, or his family. But if it was tails, Adam would be the luckiest person alive. He would only have to experience what James's brother did, drowning in the Sun River until he passed out. Adam finally realized he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Panic took over him, and he screamed desperately. He revealed that it was not just him, but Klein Tim and Olka Immer were also there, and they were the ones who pushed Raphael, not him. But no one was listening. His pleas did not matter. James replied that Adam had decided their fate the moment he said tails, turning his hand over to show the coin. He smirked, telling Adam he was lucky. As it was the 70th time in a row, the coin had landed on tails. Adam was almost fainting from fear. His father had already fallen to his knees, completely broken. Hans stepped forward, kicking the police chief to wake him up. James instructed the police chief to record a video and send it through their usual way. He warned that if he did not receive the video of his son and the 2 other boys within 2 days, the heads option would become real. He then wished them a nice day. With that, James walked out of the police station as if nothing had happened. Slowly, as his anger faded, a different feeling took over. Fear. He wondered what terrible thing he had just done. He had just threatened the police chief's son, his entire family, and even an NSBI agent inside the police station.